Yes, my name is Koide Koti. I'm the founder and the director of the Bushwick Film Festival, and I'm so excited to welcome you here today for our movie industry conference with a few of old friends and some new friends and organizations that I love. I would love if everybody can come on stage. If Kevin, if you could bring everybody on stage to start the conversation. Hey, Christina. Oh my God, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
We're just, oh my God, I'm so happy. I haven't seen you in ages.
I know.
Adam, good to see you too. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Raul, we have everybody up.
Hey.
Thank you all for joining us today, for being a part of our annual festival. I know two of you personally from a few years, and Raul, we're just meeting for the first
nice to meet you.
time. But as you all know, I love supporting filmmakers and giving them a platform to share their stories, and also a place for them to connect with folks like you, to learn from you, and also, you know, for you to share your experience with them as well. So I'll just quickly jump in to ask each of you to introduce yourself and tell us what company you're with, and then I'll jump into questions right after that. I'll start with Christina. Or Raul, sorry. I didn't know you were going to jump in.
Oh, sure, yeah. I can just start. Yeah, so my name is Rahul Roy. I work at Magnolia Pictures in the theatrical distribution department. I basically do everything that's involved with the booking process for our films, so getting our films into theaters, which has, of course, been a difficult thing over the past year or so. And then also the marketing of our films at the theatrical level, with trailers, posters, et cetera, all the in-theater marketing. I manage that. And then finally at the end, getting payments for those theatrical releases. So like settling engagements, invoicing, all the accounting back-end stuff, which isn't very exciting to talk about, but it's incredibly necessary. So yeah, I've been there for 5 years now. So it's been a little bit of time, and yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, what I do. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I love Magnolia Pictures. I have a good friend, Lorna, that works there.
Oh, Lorna, yeah.
In sales, and I love the holiday parties, which I
Oh,
can't
yes.
wait. I can't wait for you guys to bring it back, hopefully in 2022.
Yes.
So Christina, I'll jump into you right after.
Thank you. So my name is Christina. I work at Endeavor Content. Endeavor Content is an independent studio. We produce film and television and documentary content. I run our Latinx business. So that means I focus on creators from Latin America and also from the US, so US Hispanic content. I work across all verticals at Endeavor Content. So I'm also developing and producing television and film projects as well. We are looking for really nuanced, creative, bold voices in the US, really trying to create content that feels different than, you know, everything else I think that's out there in that space, really trying to paint a 360 picture of the US Latino experience, but also trying to create really elevated premium Spanish language content internationally that we think has the potential to travel. So as a studio, we heavily finance development, which means we option books and articles, pieces of IP. We work with producers to find writers to develop that content, and usually it sometimes will attach a piece of talent or a director, and then we work with all of the networks and many of the streamers. I would say probably the majority of our business is working with the Apples and the Amazons and the Netflixes of the world. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That sounds extremely busy. I can't wait I'm just so, when we jump into questions, I'm so curious is your strategy for finding things that are completely different. So I'm assuming that it must take a lot of just like going out there and going to events and meeting people, but we'll jump into that as soon as we hear from Adam Newhouse, who I know from back in the day from the Ghetto Film School, and also obviously you're on the board of the Bushwick Film Institute. So I'll let you continue from there.
Thanks, Quebe. You are an inspiration. You continue to be. Happy to be a part of the festival. It's amazing to see how it's grown over the years. So congratulations for that. I lead development for ESPN, primarily ESPN Films. So that's 30 for 30 across features, shorts, and podcasts, ESPN Films projects, and then ESPN Plus, which is our direct-to-consumer streaming platform. So we are primarily looking for anything that has to do with sports or competition or athleticism or adventure or games, anything that fits any of those buckets. We're trying to pick the best stories among those, ideally auteur-driven stuff, especially on the film side. 30 for 30 has been around quite a while now. We've made over 100 feature films and almost 100 short films. So we every year are just trying to make sure the best sports stuff comes from ESPN.
I love 30 for 30. It's even, I mean, I was an athlete in my first career. So, but watching 30 for 30 documentaries is always really exciting. And I find that it brings people that are not very interested in the sports world into that community and helps them appreciate that world. So
that's our favorite thing. We want people who do not like sports to watch our films. That would be ideal for us.
Not for what do you call it? Not for athletes, for people. So do you all know each other, or have you met each other before?
I mean, I've seen Christina's name over the years bouncing about, but no, I have not met personally. It's great.
That's so cool. I love it. I love it. I love that you all haven't met each other, even though that you both, all three of you, are doing incredible work and at the top of the industry in a sense. Christina, I want to ask you first a little backstory about how I know Christina. I don't remember exactly how we met, but like 14 years ago, probably like the first year of the Bushwick Film Festival. Were you working with Make the Road?
Yeah. We were producing a documentary about a group of young immigrant Latino, mostly undocumented kids who were making movies about their lives. So we were not only producing that documentary, but we are producing the workshop with and at Make the Road by Walking in Bushwick to help them create those videos. That's right. That's where we met. I can't believe it's been 14 years. I'm like, damn, dating us.
I know, right? But you also bought the film Donati to the festival, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. Yes.
What a beautiful film. Can you tell us a little bit, not about the film, but let's go back to Endeavor. You mentioned in your introduction about how you guys really, really focus on super unique content. Mm-hmm. What is your process with finding that? Because I mean, it's almost impossible to find super unique content with, the internet and digital and just people, so what's the strategy for that?
I think everyone probably has a different strategy in terms of how they find content. I know some people are more attracted to original IP, like I was saying, really trying to go after, we use Book Scouts, which I think is incredibly helpful for us to find new pieces of material that are hitting the marketplace, and we can be aggressive about those and competitive, I think, in terms of getting those. We heavily rely on our relationships with producers and production companies, heavily rely on our relationships with agents and managers. I would say probably for me, the majority of material that I get is from those relationships and them introducing us to new writers who have ideas or who have scripts, or even just following up, with pieces of talent that we love and knowing what they're working on. And part of it also is from cultivating relationships with filmmakers throughout the year, throughout the years, but also throughout our business, right? We really try to to help filmmakers bridge their careers. We like to work on first and second features and then see those filmmakers grow. It's finding unique pieces of material can come, I think, in all different forms. And the challenge is really kind of making sure that you're doing all of those things at the same time, right? That you're reading the book memos, that you're following up with managers and agents, that you're going to film festivals and watching movies and discovering new talent. And of course, always paying attention to what is working. We also spend a fair amount of time talking with, distributors and talking with streamers, trying to understand, for instance, period pieces is not working. Streamers don't want to buy them. So when you get pitched them, you kind of know, like, that's not what we're looking for right now. There's a big hunger for genre and thriller. There's a big hunger for those to be diverse led, so when we have those kinds of tips from studios, it helps us, it also helps us find things, but it's always a challenge. I find it tricky. We reread so many scripts, and sometimes it feels like, 20% or 15% of those are things that we just love and immediately respond to. But again, I think I try to drive my business by being filmmaker focused and voice focused, writer focused, instead of idea focused. Because if we love somebody, then we know we're probably going to have success with whatever they do. That's my process.
No, that's really, really good to hear, that you consider well, obviously it sounds like a lot to do, but also it's good to hear that you consider the creator as well in the process of making decisions. And I want to jump over to Raul, and I know you are specifically distribution.
Yes.
And that's something that every filmmaker in the film festival, or in the process of creating, they're trying to get this distribution deal. Like, how do I get a distribution? Who are the distributors? Magnolia is a big organization, especially in the indie film world, specifically in New York, and obviously internationally as well, because you guys also go to a lot of international markets. Can you tell us, what makes Magnolia interested in deciding whether they want to offer a distribution deal to a film?
Yeah, so I actually don't directly work in the acquisition side of things. I am primarily, like, once a film is acquired, I am I'm the last phase of the release, basically, right? Like, once we have a film, I then get into theaters, etc. But in terms of just what I've seen, like, for the recent trend of what Magnolia is targeting, especially, like, during the pandemic, there's just, like, a lot less out there that's to acquire. A lot of it's going to bigger streamers and stuff, like the stuff that we typically want. But so we've actually been targeting a lot of genre films and thrillers, which I think Christina mentioned as well with Endeavor. That's, like, been a pretty big, like, strategy for us, just because when you think of Magnolia, you often associate that brand with documentaries and foreign independent feature films, and that's certainly still happening, but it's definitely, we are leaning more on horror genre thriller type films as of late, especially with the drive-in boom that happened over the past year. As things return back more to normal, hopefully things improve, and we start getting more of those films on the level of, like, RBG or I Am Not Your Negro from back in the day. We've also been relying quite a bit on our output deals with streamers, actually. Doing kind of service deals where we work with streamers like Apple and National Geographic to release their films for them. So we recently worked on Fauci for National Geographic, and I think one of their producers is on a panel later today. And then also we just released Velvet Underground into theaters for Apple. So that's been, like, a lot of the work lately. It's been relying on the genre films, and then also, like, these sort of service deals we have with streamers. That's kind of how we've weathered the storm with the recent pandemic, and with less content for us being out there. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. I don't know if that did, but again, I don't directly work with acquisition, so I'm more speaking to, like, what I've been seeing within our company and what I've been told and stuff. But yeah.
But how do you, I mean, I'm assuming that the departments must have some, or like, what if they acquire a film that you're like, it's going to be kind of hard to distribute this, like, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do you
Right,
guys
yeah.
communicate with each other in that sense?
Yeah, there is definitely some communication there, and definitely so our head of distribution. So I work under our head of distribution, so he is kind of more involved with that. And just like yeah, we always have to stay abreast of the marketplace, and also like if we acquire a film, like okay, how will this film do at this theater, like at the in New York and LA, and like yeah, there's definitely those considerations for sure, and whether or not we want to release the film day and date on VOD, theatrically and on VOD at the same time, or if we want to do just theatrical only, like a platform release where it's like opens in New York and LA and then expands slowly over time. So yeah, when a film is being acquired, they consider all these possible like what release strategy will work best. And we also, when we acquire a film, we typically in these contracts, there's like theatrical commitments that we have to adhere to. So like sometimes a film is acquired and we have to get it on 100 screens on opening week. So and then that becomes like, more work for us, obviously. But and yeah, so there is some synergy going on there. But again, yeah, I'm actually not directly involved in those. Those are kind of our higher level folk. Yeah, so but that's what I know.
Okay, we're gonna have to send them a memo that says like, listen, you can't bring films to us that we can't distribute.
Yeah,
properly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Adam, ESPN does like original content. I guess the biggest thing I'm curious about, which I actually never asked you before, is what is the process of, because not everybody, but most people that you spotlight in 30 for 30 are pretty famous sports players, and they all have interesting stories. So how do you decide which famous athlete that you want to cover and create original content for?
I think the key, again, it's not just about, hey, have you thought about covering this person? Like every day we come in and think about sports stocks. So yes, we've probably thought about covering that person again. And we're trying to think about what's the angle and who's the auteur. Last year we did a film called Be Water, which is a Bruce Lee film under 30 for 30. And that wasn't A to Z Bruce Lee. That was Bruce Lee through the prism of Asian American male representation in Hollywood, especially in the years when he was living in LA and couldn't get a job and had to go to Hong Kong to become a star, as told by a Vietnamese American filmmaker in all archival. So again, it's like, what's your angle on the story? And do you have the backstory or the history of work to pull off that angle? And we're not just looking at people who have shiny statues as storytellers. We are aggressively scouting first and second time directors and trying to find people who can match the style that they are known for with the pitch that they have. And I think I'm trying to zig while everyone else is zagging in the doc space. I feel like it's a bit of a land grab. I have this person, let's do a doc on it. Or this thing happened yesterday, let's do a doc on it tomorrow. And I think one of the things that stands out about 30 for 30 is it's about context and perspective. And sometimes that can be achieved by a little bit of time that has passed to see if something is really important. Or one of the simple questions we ask for any pitch is, so what? Like, what is the purpose of this? Like, are we just making a thing to make a thing? The interesting thing about ESPN is it's a live sport business. Like, content is like, we're like a rounding error for the business. Like, however big you think ESPN is, it's bigger than that. We have football and college football and every major sport all over. So we have quantity, so we don't need quantity. So for us, we're trying to make 6 to 8 bets a year on particular projects. But really it's that idea plus the filmmaker, and then can we give them money and time? And I think that's the kind of like only equation I've seen that gives you the best shot of doing something that could actually cut through, because as we all know, there's a million things in the marketplace now. And so if you're going to have something, I just feel like quality is the only thing that has a long tail on it. And so because we don't need as much quantity, we're always just trying to say like, hey, why is this special? Why should this come from us? And so we turn down a lot of things that just feel top level or just feel like they're just trying to do a land grab and do a sale on the dock side. So there's a lot of things we're excited about. And there's that kind of magic moment when we find like the exact right filmmaker for the exact right story at the exact right time. And that's the kind of thing that I'm always looking for.
That sounds incredible. Can you tell us about a magic moment? Like just one or two, like when you guys are like, yes, this all.
Yeah, I mean, we announced this film that I think is going to be special coming out, but we have a 30 for 30 coming out about American Gladiators. And I think this is kind of like a perfect thing. People will be like, well, why is that a sports? Oh, it's athleticism. Oh, yeah. We're trying to like put things on its head, but we're working with Ben Berman, who did the Amazing Jonathan documentary on Hulu, which is a wild out there doc. And this story is wild and out there. And so we just feel like that story plus him, in the framework that we've decided on is going to be a tremendous thing for us. We recently came out with a film called Once Upon a Time in Queens about the 1986 Mets. That was directed by Nick Davis, executive produced by Jimmy Kimmel. And that was one where it was a story that for years, nobody could get their hands on because it had a lot of, let's just say mature content, and Major League Baseball wasn't on board. But over the years, like people would come and finally there was a package that came together with Major League Baseball on board, with a director that we liked, with Jimmy Kimmel as an executive producer. And so it's one of those things that I've been pitched that thing, 10 times by 10 other filmmakers, but at that right moment with that right filmmaker, with that right package, it all kind of came together, and it came out earlier this fall and was a big hit for us.
That's so good to hear. Wow, congratulations. And I want to talk about packaging a little bit, but I have before I forget, the one question that popped in my head when we were talking is you mentioned that, and I want to talk to Magnolia and Endeavor as well about this. You mentioned that you guys only do like 6 to 8 projects a year. And, Christina and Raul, I know you all get pitched.
Christina did 6 to 8 projects before lunchtime. She does 60 to 80.
So I'll go around. I'll start with Raul. Like, how many projects do you all maybe acquire or even get pitched to acquire, or and how many do you end up looking for distribution for and distributing?
So the idea of pitches is interesting. At Magnolia, primarily, we don't typically acquire things up from the script level, or it's typically finished films that get acquired. We're starting to expand to developing and financing, producing stuff from the ground up. The recent Hail Satan documentary, that was one example of that. That was something that started to kind of pitch level, but it's primarily not receiving pitches. It's or even cold submissions. Really, it's like finished films. And I forget what the other half of the question was. It was
how many do you distribute a year?
Oh yeah, so Magnolia, actually we release a lot of films every year, typically like 15 to 20. I think it's been less this year. I actually don't have the number off the top of my head for 2021, but it's a lot less. We're actually entering a pretty slow period right now. So it's 15 to 20, I think, is like the average number of films we release per year.
Yeah. And Christina, what's going on over at Endeavor?
It's total cuckoo. I mean, we have, I think just the film department alone has like 100 projects in development. I run like our Latin business. We have a YA business, we have a doc business. Then we just have folks who are like generally doing film and television. I have, I think, 26 in my own little business. So everybody probably has that. I mean, it feels like there's a lot, but I think Adam said it perfectly, which is I don't actually want more projects. I want to convert. I want to develop those. I want to package them successfully, and I want to sell them. And when we sell them, sometimes we sell them, to a streamer to develop even further. And sometimes we sell them straight to greenlight, or to a pilot. But what you want is not only do you want to convert, but you want to convert with success, right? And a lot of that comes down to how you're packaging and trying to make that perfect package. But like Adam says, the seed of that is just having something that's incredibly nuanced, that's incredibly energizing and beautiful and specific and universal and fresh, that doesn't feel, it feels like something that you haven't heard before, or something that you haven't seen, or something that you really feel can make greater change. I mean, I think about the content that I watch on ESPN, for instance, and, I would never consider myself, I mean, I like, watching NBA and stuff like that, but I don't think of myself as a sports fan, but I watch the docs on ESPN because they're remarkable docs. They're remarkable pieces of documentary content. And what you're watching are these human stories, right? You're watching universal stories. You're watching stories about connection. You're not like learning about the sport per se, but at the same time, I remember, for instance, like after watching the
Last Dance.
the golfer, maybe it wasn't ESPN, the
Woodstock.
no,
Golfer.
There's a golfer involved.
like the most famous golfer.
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods, yeah. So for instance, like just speaking about
Not an ESPN project.
Not
Just
an
want to put
ESPN
it out
project.
there.
Not an ESPN project, but I remember watching that and thinking like, it made me more curious about that world. It made me more curious about golf. But at the end of the day, it was really this human story about this father and his son, and I think the beautiful thing, whenever we're making content, whether it's based on sports or based on a Latin character, it's really trying to create content that sparks conversation, that sparks emotion, and again, a lot of that comes down to finding the perfect filmmaker and the perfect voice.
I think that's totally right what Christina said. We're trying to find something universal, and it's just the prism which to tell the story, something primal that you don't have to be a sports fan. We don't care what the score was in the game, what are you trying to say about it? And, that's an evolving conversation as well, depending on when a film comes out and what time period it's released. We do 6 to 8 features a year, 2 short films a year, and then 2 to 3 narrative podcasts a year. And then ESPN Plus, which is our direct to consumer product, part of the Disney bundle, there might be 5 to 10 series a year. So there is a little bit more than the 6 to 8, but I think this year we're on pace for about 1,500 pitches to come in, and we'll have said yes to like 4 things probably overall. So it's a pretty brutal needle to thread overall, but a lot of times that's part of our job, which is to hear pitches, to make filmmakers feel heard, and then to tell them no in a way that can bring me the next thing back to us and feel good about it. I spent my whole career on the production company side, so I know how hard it is to go out and pitch projects. And I just want projects where it's almost as if the creator doesn't care what I say because they're going to get it made no matter what. That's the kind of level of passion or interest. And, we're always looking for something unique. So yes, we would have done a Michael Jordan project, maybe regardless, but it really was the 500 hours of never before seen behind the scenes footage that made it kind of special. So, again, what's that thing that you have? What's that angle that you're coming at it that feels very fresh? It doesn't matter if other stuff has been done in the realm.
Congratulations, by the way, on the Michael Jordan. It was so phenomenal. It was so phenomenal for that reason. I mean, I really loved it because I felt it's not just about this man, it's about the time. It was like looking at a picture of history.
What's interesting, Christine? I wonder if you guys are doing the same thing. Like, I've been telling filmmakers, like, I want 21st century stories, or at least mid 90s on up, because you get a little bit of that co-viewing. On The Last Dance, we had, people who grew up with LeBron, who've been hearing the LeBron Michael debates, watching with their parents who actually got to watch Jordan. So I had this really nice crossover of audience, which is something I think that we are looking for more and more. I mean, we're 21 years into this century. So my whole joke now is like, I don't need to see another doc about the 60s. The 60s have had like enough content made about it. So I'm looking for more new things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think buyers feel the same way. Again, like I was saying, we really hear a lot that buyers want things that are, contemporary, stories that feel fresh. But, we care a lot about the co-viewing. We have a whole kind of 4-quadrant YA department, and specifically me, where I'm trying to create content that works for a Latin American audience. US Latinos, there's a lot of co-viewing, right? So Latino women who run households really decide what the family watches, and they tend to watch things together, right? And there tend to be multiple family members who come together to watch content. So we do care a lot about that, and it certainly makes a difference when we're, deciding where to put our money, if we think that something can pop.
Thank you. Sorry for the little movement. My computer was about to die. Yeah, I really love that you guys are, vibing off of each other, and, the stories that y'all love. I know we're going to start Q&A in like 5 minutes. So I do want to talk a little bit about where, all of you work with distributors, or not distributors, work with platforms to get these stories on. And I want to start with Raul, because as working in distribution and working with the platforms, like, could you tell us, and even the filmmakers on the call, like, where do your stories go? Like, where is it being distributed?
In terms of digital platforms, or
what platforms, theaters?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned a real, like, a big way we've been weathering this pandemic storm has been the strength of our output deals with streamers. We for a while, we've had an exclusive Hulu output deal, so a lot of Magnolia films can be found on Hulu. And actually, it's even connected to our theatrical releases. If our theatrical grosses hit a certain number for each film, and there's tiers we have set up with our deals with streamers like Hulu. If we hit like the 100K mark in theatrical gross, then it will trigger a different part of that. We'll get more money from Hulu for that film. So that's been like a big way. I think a lot of like indie distributors have been staying afloat, really, is the strength of those partnerships. We've also been diversifying, and now, again, I'm not entirely involved with the legal processes here, but you can now find our films on HBO Max and on Amazon Prime. So they've been like spreading out, so it's not just Hulu now. But yeah, again, that's been a huge kind of source of revenue. It's hard to say, because I do work with theaters, and so when we are relying so much on the digital side of things, especially now, it's good. It's just another source of revenue, really. But like, I hopefully, the theatrical side of things picks back up later. But because that's always still, even with the documentary, still the best way to experience it. That's kind of where we're at in terms of our platforms and whatnot.
I'm curious about, I don't remember exactly the person or the actor it was. I think earlier this year, there was an actor that like made a deal for theatrical release, but then the pandemic hit, and then they like released it digitally, and it was like this whole thing. She sued the
Scarlett.
Scarlett.
I mean, it's happening across lots of talent. I'm sure, I work at Disney, ESPN, Hulu, Disney. So, all of the deals and all the things that have happened in the past are all being remade in real time. And so it's been complicated in terms of figuring out, how distribution exists. I mean, I think for our stuff, what we try to offer people is, there's a question in the chat that got put in, we like to be involved from the very beginning, because we like to fully finance and fully own from the very beginning. We also believe that our small group has made some really extraordinary content, and that if you make your film with us, we'll make your film better by going through our process and leading on our expertise. So while we do look and watch finished projects, we ideally want to be part of the creative process. We want to be part of shaping it overall from the very beginning. And this way, and our sell to filmmakers is basically, we want to treat your film like an event. We want to take it to film festivals. Then we want to give it a linear ESPN date next to an NBA game. Then we want to put it on our streaming service. And, I think some of the streamers are, there's a lot of tiles on these streamers, and a lot of stuff can get lost, and I think part of our sell to filmmakers and storytellers is come be an event with us. Come let us really market your project through all the ESPN levers that we can pull across radio and television and .com and social. And you won't be one of 100 projects. You'll be one of 6 projects. And we'll still believe that, as Raul said, like, we still believe the experience in a theater is very important for a project, not just for the filmmaker, but just for the artist and artistry in general, just being in a dark room and experiencing something together. So I think there's a lot of new models that are being put together, but for my personal opinion, I think it's best if a product or a film or a series can go through as many of those different places and be consumed kind of everywhere.
I would just add one thing that I think, ESPN and Magnolia are brands, right? People associate them with premium elevated sports docs, or like indie elevated smart also docs, at Magnolia. But these are, when you think about a streamer, like how do you describe those streamers? It's very hard to do because there's so much content, right? And that's great. Then there's a little bit of like, there's something for everybody. But I really think it is important, I would say, and that's kind of like always our pitch. It's like, don't just go develop something straight with a streamer. Let us incubate it here at a studio. We care about the filmmaker. We care about what it is, the story that you want to tell, and we'll be able to protect you, and we'll be able to kind of fight for your vision when we end up selling it, or when we end up, whenever it does have a life on a streamer. So I do think, and I've seen that when people are just, when filmmakers have a bunch of offers from different distributors and they want to go with that Magnolia, or they want to go with that Neon or A24. Those are, I think that the branding, and being filmmaker first and having filmmakers be attracted to working with that particular studio, is important. And I think that, these streamers are beginning to understand the value of those brands, and are using those brands too, right? When eventually something gets, put on a platform, they're leaning on that a little bit. But yeah, I do think more and more it's going to be important to have that kind of buffer before content is made straight for a streamer.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one last question. Hopefully all the questions that I wanted to ask will be asked in the audience. The last, obviously, 2 years, the industry in general, in all distribution, acquisitions, development, production, like everything has just changed, like not, for different reasons, right? There is diversity issues. There's also safety on set. That's obviously, the conversation at the moment. Can you maybe share a little bit about how the industry has impacted, the pandemic has impacted your specific companies, and how you sort of overcame 2020? And then, I'll hold the last question for after you talk about that. I guess 2020, how has the mix between the pandemic, as well as obviously, Hollywood coming to terms with their diversity and inclusion issues?
I guess I can speak on the pandemic side of things, because again, working directly with movie theaters as my job, as my role at Magnolia Pictures, it was very difficult, because for a period theaters were closed nationwide, and then even as they started reopening, there were capacity limits, et cetera. And then, as I mentioned, there was a brief like drive-in boom, and then we were like really leaning towards horror and genre films as an acquisition strategy, like specifically getting those films and getting them into drive-ins so we can meet those theatrical commitment agreements in these contracts for that I mentioned also. And yeah, we also while theaters were closed, we created a virtual cinema model, which I don't know if anybody here has ever tried that out. Tried watching a film through a virtual cinema platform. I know a few other distributors have done it. I think Kino was the one that kind of spearheaded it, Kino Lorber. And that's what we sort of like borrowed, took a page from their playbook on that one. They helped us set our platform up. And so yeah, for a while we were doing virtual cinema releases, where instead of like renting a film through like an Amazon or an iTunes or whatever, you could just rent the film through a theater's dedicated sort of web page. And we use this platform called Eventive, and it was basically just like a VOD rental, but your money is directly supporting a theater while they're closed. And so that's what we were doing as a sort of we pivoted to that. It didn't really generate a whole lot, but it was something, and all the proceeds went to the theaters. It was kind of a goodwill gesture. And that, yeah, that was like, luckily we've sort of phased that out as theaters have reopened. And so because it wasn't really doing a whole lot, but that was one way we adapted. And now again, it's starting to pick back up. It's still been pretty tough, especially on our side of things with like the elevated sort of indie film space. Getting like a big box office hit has been tricky, has been very difficult. And, so I think that's the most kind of direct way the pandemic affected the distribution side of things.
I'm so happy the theaters are opening back up again. We had our first live screening yesterday. And I've been going to the theater a lot more often over the last couple months. Christina, Adam, do you want to weigh in on distribution, or maybe diversity and inclusion, or even safety on set? Obviously, with the loss of Helena Hutchins, and how the production teams are, like how production companies are supposed to take care of their workers, et cetera.
I just joined the company in April, so I haven't worked on any sets yet. So I'm not really the one to talk about on set safety and things like that. Although I will echo that it's absolutely devastating and something has to change. But in terms of, I know how our production was affected during the pandemic, I would say in two ways. One of which, it became more difficult to do independent films because COVID precautions just took up so much of the budget. It was like a third or a fourth of the budget was going to that. And I know that we had to pivot to things that were, I think we stopped doing stuff that felt too indie for a moment. I think now we're going back to that. But also we had to be very, flexible in terms of production. We have a show on Hulu called 9 Perfect Strangers that we began shooting in California, and then the pandemic started and we moved the entire set of production to Australia and finished shooting, and then moved post back to California. So, we had to be nimble, we had to be resourceful. And I know a lot of studios, we're doing the same.
It was obviously a big deal for ESPN because there was no sports, which is the whole business. So you might have noticed things like Korean baseball deals got done. There was all kinds of ingenuity at ESPN in terms of working with our partners to kind of stem the tide. And then they took our entire slate of stuff that was close to done and really moved it up. And that's why, certainly Last Dance became a cultural moment. Because we had it, close enough to ready that we were able to kind of expedite and get that done. But we went from that and we did our Lance Armstrong film, our Bruce Lee film, our Maguire Sosa film. So we were able, luckily we had enough stuff in production to kind of really try to stem the tide for the company as a whole until sports came back, which thankfully it is back, and people are going into those things. So that was the biggest thing about pandemic. A lot of our films are archival based, so we were able to keep most of the production just going. Several of our films, had to do some, as Christina said, like bump up those budgets for COVID stuff, but it's really just single interviews. So it was a little bit easier. And then on diversity and inclusion, I will say, for a corporation, which I think, for all things, like Disney has done a pretty good job of really instituting some top level programs and change across our business. It's been really great to see, they're kind of trying to walk the walk and making diversity and inclusion, not an afterthought, but a primary pillar of what we do, and the storytellers we find, the stories we tell, and the way the company spends its dollars is the way to kind of assess some of that as well. So it's been obviously a lot of upheaval in this world, but I think, concrete action is the best way to, less talk, more action. You're on mute, Quay.
You're muted. Seriously, that's like, if I hear that phrase one more time, I'm like always muted. So there's some questions here in the audience, and we have about 5 to 10 more minutes. I know we started a few minutes early. If you guys don't mind going to like 1:03. Oh wait, I see a whole bunch of things popped up. I will start with, I guess this is maybe a quick answer for Adam. Why doesn't ESPN accept pitches for finished films?
I mentioned briefly, we evaluate the market. We just like to be involved in the creative from the very beginning. So we want to make sure the best sports stories end up. And certainly now, and I'm sure Christina is seeing this as well, a lot of documentaries are being deficit financed at this point because it's been big business. So people and investors are paying now. And so we are seeing stuff that is finished, but we just believe that we do. If you make your film with us, it'll become a better film. So we want to get involved from the very beginning, but we are open to breaking all of our rules for the right project. And just, I know there's one right underneath that. I'm not saying we won't do films about the 60s. I'm just saying the bar is higher. And I've seen 10 Muhammad Ali docs in the last 5 years. So you're not watching enough, Andrew. You got to really get out there. But it's just the bar is higher, maybe, to convince me that it's something new and special.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a question from one of our filmmakers from this year. His name is Fabio, and this is for Christina. He did a short doc about communication from the point of view of people with disabilities in Brazil. As a first-time gay Latino director without distribution, could you offer him some advice on, what would attract an organization like Endeavor or a larger organization to help him push forward or move forward?
Yeah, I mean, we are always looking for new voices. I think we really rely heavily and encourage filmmakers to use the film festival market and circuit as a way to really build your network and also get your film seen by executives. Even through COVID, we were attending all of the major film festivals and markets virtually. We were still doing virtual pitches. We were still attending co-production markets. We partner with a lot of organizations like NALIP, which is the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, to participate in forums and conferences. This is really where we find new voices. We find new voices when they win at film festivals. We find new voices when we hear an incredible pitch. So really, Fabio, I would encourage you to find some of those local, film festivals or organizations that will really give you a platform and the opportunity to connect, with executives who have the power to bring you new opportunities or, hear what it is, you have to say.
Thank you. One thing that I will ask too, on the behalf of like independent filmmakers who go through festivals, the biggest struggle obviously is like connecting with agents, managers, and I know all of you probably also get a lot of content through agents, etc. Is there, it's hard to get in contact with the agent, right? As a new emerging filmmaker, is there any advice? And this is basically, this question I'm coming from Alexandra Henry, who directed a film in the festival called Street Heroines, and it follows three Latina artists in Bushwick, three Latina artists. And she's saying, without an agent, how do you get this in front of anybody really? And I know you just mentioned that before, but sometimes it's almost impossible for films to get into festivals. The percentage of chances of a film getting into a festival is very low, especially for a festival like Sundance, which a lot of people attend in the industry. It's like 2%. Are there any other ways that filmmakers could get in front of people like you that doesn't have to be through an agent, through a festival? Or is that just the industry? Is that just how it is?
I don't know if any, Adam, why don't I?
I think Christina, probably harder for Christina because she works at an agency. So I feel like she's dealing with like, I I'm not that hard to find, you know, and we have people can sign our waiver. I think most of the times, like, you know, as Christina said, like festival service curation as well. So, you know, if you have a film and it hasn't gotten into several festivals, like that might be your film is not as strong as you think it is, you know, and it's not, and I agree, there's so many better films than just arrive at Sundance, but it hasn't gotten into any festivals, then you might not be hard enough on your project as well. So it's a challenge as well. Like I said, we got 1,500 pitches this year, you know, and we're saying yes to, you know, 4 or 5 things. So there's just a limited number of slots. But, you know, and to touch on another question in there in terms of what mediums, like just makes, there's no such thing as something that's hidden that's great anymore. If it's truly great, there are people scouring social media, digital, film festivals. If it's actually great, it will win awards. It will get picked up. It will be passed around, and it will be get into somebody's hands, whether it's an assistant, an executive, a producer, anybody to help champion it. So I think there's more tools out there. I think it's a bit of an excuse to think that you can't get in front of people these days. There's lots of ways to connect with people. People are accessible through Twitter. They're accessible through any version of social media. So I would say turn that back around on yourself. I know it's hard. Filmmakers have to play every role, but you know, there you go.
I really appreciate that. I wish more people. So thank you, Adam. Kind of spoke. You know, openly. I also say when people ask questions about managers and agents, they will find you. You know, that is all they do. And there are a lot of people at those big agencies who are motivated to find new talent. If you should be doing this, you will find a great manager, you know, or a great agent. I will also say multiple times we have found things on Instagram. You know, we're getting things from, you know, TikTok artists, things. We have a lot of filmmakers who are, you know, doing things on YouTube. So I agree. It's not just about making a film and thinking that there's only one path, which is getting a distributor and getting, you know, or getting it to a streamer. There are multiple ways to share your content and to find success.
I think that's really great to hear you all say that, and that keeps the creatives and the filmmakers very honest with their work and not so and keeps them motivated to grow. And I really think that was a really good response, and I appreciate that. You know, it's 1:02, and I just want to keep talking with all 4 of you. I think I've actually got to all the questions, if I didn't, Sumaya, just chat me, and hopefully I could maybe message it later in an email or something. But Christina, Adam, Raul, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for supporting the festival just by being here. I know you all are super busy people. So
keep doing you. So proud to see the festival grow. This is one of the best festivals that I attend every year. And so for everyone out there, obviously, thanks for supporting Quebe and Bushwick Film Festival. I will always be a supporter of this.
Thank you all. Thank you. I hope you all can watch some movies at our platform, watch.bushwickfilmfestival.com. And, you know, have a good holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you.